She believed wealth could bend reality, even justice itself. Cameras were already rolling inside the Providence Municipal Court when a well-known business magnate named Ariana Sterling strode in, wearing confidence like armor and entitlement like a scent trailing behind her. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished floor, announcing her presence long before she even spoke. She wasn't here to apologize. She wasn't here to reflect. She was here to prove that rules were merely guidelines for everyone but her. What Ariana didn't realize was that Judge Frank Caprio had already reviewed a portion of the officer's notes that would wipe that smug expression clean from her face. When her case was called, Ariana barely glanced up from her phone. The clerk read out her violation: 56 mph in a 30 mph residential area, the kind of reckless speed that could change lives in an instant. The officer's report included an unusual comment. Driver refused to cooperate, cited high-level connections. The gallery whispered among themselves, but Judge Caprio stayed unmoved. He had seen attitude before, but Ariana radiated a kind of practiced superiority that challenged anyone to question her. "Good morning, Miss Sterling," the judge said calmly. Ariana offered a smile sharp as glass. "Let's wrap this up quickly. I have a shareholder briefing waiting." And just like that, the battle line was drawn: entitlement versus integrity. What she didn't know yet, what none of the viewers online knew, was that this appearance wasn't simply about speeding. Hidden in the report was a detail she assumed no one would ever bring up again. But Judge Caprio had read every line. Before this was over, Ariana's public persona, her brand, her veneer of control, everything would start to fracture under the weight of truth. Because this wasn't the story of a fine. It was the story of a woman who believed she owned the world, discovering that real authority doesn't wear designer clothing. It wears a robe and holds patience sharper than any penalty. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. Because what happens next touches anyone who's ever wished to see the powerful finally stand equal before the law. Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Providence Municipal Court. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, lighting the seal of justice behind Judge Caprio. It was supposed to be a routine session. Everyday traffic cases, the typical apologies, the familiar phrase, "drive carefully next time." But the moment Ariana Sterling entered, the atmosphere shifted like a sudden change in weather. Court staff exchanged quick glances. Even the bailiff leaned in and whispered, "Your Honor, this one might give you trouble." Ariana didn't walk, she arrived. Designer sunglasses pushed onto her head, a tailored blazer worth more than most of the cars parked outside, and a phone she treated like an extension of her identity. Every step she took spoke one message: "I don't belong here among these people." She scanned the line of parents, delivery drivers, retirees, ordinary citizens, and smirked. To her, they weren't people. They were background noise. Judge Caprio flipped through the file. Citation: 56 in a 30. Defendant argumentative declined to sign the citation, claimed she didn't have time for police. Then he looked up. "Miss Sterling," he said, "please come forward." She didn't budge. "Can we move this along? I'm already late." A few people laughed awkwardly. Everyone could feel the tension snapping tighter. Caprio's voice sharpened slightly. "In this courtroom, Miss Sterling, every person waits their turn, including you." Ariana tossed her phone in her bag with theatrical frustration and walked to the front. "Fine. Yes, I was speeding," she said. "Let me pay and leave." "This is incredibly unnecessary." Her tone cut like cold steel. The people behind her, single parents juggling bills, workers trying not to fall behind, stared in disbelief. Caprio turned to the officer. "Was anyone harmed?" "No injuries, Your Honor, but she drove through a school zone." A wave of shock rippled through the room. Ariana shrugged. "It was early. Kids weren't outside yet." "The law," Caprio replied, "doesn't wait for tragedy to validate its purpose." Her expression twitched not with guilt but annoyance. The judge continued, each question peeling back another layer of her indifference. Each answer she gave sank her deeper. People weren't watching a traffic hearing anymore. They were watching arrogance unravel in slow motion. And then Caprio lifted a second document, one Ariana clearly didn't expect. "Miss Sterling," he said, "this isn't your first dangerous incident. Last year, you were given a warning for nearly running down a school crossing assistant outside Maple Ridge Elementary. Do you recall that?" Gasps. Real stunned gasps. Ariana froze. That was exaggerated. Caprio's disappointment was louder than anger. "You almost hit someone protecting children, and you thought that wasn't worth mentioning." "I paid the fine," she snapped. "What else do you want?" "Accountability," he said softly. Her facade cracked, but she kept fighting. "You're making an example out of me because I'm successful." "No," Caprio replied. "Because you believe success is a shield you can swing at anyone who tries to hold you responsible." She pulled out her phone again. "Put the phone down," he ordered. "If you walk out, you will be held in contempt." The entire room went silent. Her confidence wavered. For the first time, uncertainty flooded her eyes. She sat down, hands trembling. Only then did Caprio continue. "You treat responsibility like a bill, something you pay and forget." Her jaw clenched. He raised her fine from $400 to $750, added court fees, and assigned her to a driver responsibility course. "You call this justice?" she muttered. "Yes," he said. "Because real justice doesn't comfort you, it confronts you." The stone wall around her finally cracked. Her voice softened. I didn't mean disrespect." Caprio nodded. "Intention isn't required for harm. Only indifference." Something shifted in the room. People no longer looked at her with anger but with humanity. He closed the file. "Today isn't a punishment, Miss Sterling. It's a turning point. What you do next will decide whether this means nothing or everything." Ariana bowed her head. "I understand," she whispered. Caprio offered a gentle, patient smile, the kind that had humbled thousands. Then maybe this was a new beginning. She walked out not triumphant, but transformed. The narrator's voice rose as the camera focused on her leaving the courtroom. In a world where status is confused with superiority, Judge Frank Caprio reminded us that dignity isn't purchased. It's lived. Ariana Sterling came in wealthy but left richer, not in money but in truth, because sometimes the most valuable thing a courtroom provides isn't a fine, it's a mirror. And when you climb high enough to look down on others, only respect keeps you from falling. If this story struck a chord, subscribe to Judge Stories, where justice isn't loud but it is unforgettable. As Alina Kincaid stepped out of the courtroom doors, the cold November air hit her like an entirely new reality. She paused at the top of the steps, staring at the city that had always bowed before her influence. But now, for the first time, it felt impossibly vast, and she felt painfully small. The cameras outside swarmed instantly, lights flashing, microphones thrust toward her like sharpened questions. "Alina, did Judge Caprio punish you unfairly?" "Alina, do you think this will affect your companies?" "Alina, any comment on the school zone incident?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. The woman who'd always had a perfect answer suddenly found herself speechless. Because for the first time, she wasn't fighting public opinion, she was fighting herself. Inside, Judge Caprio watched her through the window, his expression unreadable. He had seen thousands of defendants walk out of that courtroom, some angry, some grateful, some unchanged. But Alina, she was a question mark. A story not finished yet. As she reached her car, she stopped. Her driver opened the door, but she didn't get in. Instead, Alina looked back at the courthouse, the place that had finally forced her to confront the one thing she had avoided her entire life, who she really was when the world stopped applauding. A single thought flickered behind her eyes, a decision forming, a step toward something she never imagined she'd consider. Before she could move, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "We need to talk. The judge didn't mention everything he found in your record." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She opened the message. A single attachment loaded, a document she had tried to bury years ago. One that could destroy everything she'd built. The courthouse doors behind her creaked open. A shadow stepped out. "Alina," a voice called. She froze, because the story wasn't over, not even close.